Hi, I'm Ron Halbritter, Technical Advisor for Legendary Auto Interiors, and I'd like to welcome you to Legendary Studio, where today we're going to show you how to install our Installation Kit 1, which includes our burlap, our 2-inch felt, our paper-coated listing wire, attaching it to our seat springs, attaching a molded foam to our seat springs, and then installing our seat cover. Now, today's example, we're going to use a 1970 Challenger. Now, you can use this as a guideline for installing any high-back bucket seat from 1970 through 1974. Now, with the help of our head installation technician, Randy Brown, we're going to show you why Legendary Auto Interiors is #1 with collectors, restorers, and enthusiasts worldwide.
Our first step will be to take some duct tape and put it around the pointed edges of the seat frame so it doesn't prematurely wear through your seat cover. Our next step will be to take a layer of burlap and attach it around the outside perimeter. We want to anchor it in the back section first, pulling some tension on it, and then put some hog rings through the burlap and around the seat springs. Now you want to put the hog rings about every 4 inches apart. You want to trim off any excess material that you have. And you want to pull tension as you're attaching the remaining hog rings. Our next step will be to attach the 2-inch felt around the outside perimeter of our seat springs. You want to go through the felt, through the burlap, and around the perimeter edge of the seat springs. Now that our front seat bottom is done, we want to move on to our front seat top. We want to attach the burlap along the bottom edge, trim off any excess towards the top edge, and again, just like we did on our front seat bottom, attach the hog rings through the burlap and around the perimeter edge of the seat springs. Now it's very important that you want to pull tension on the burlap as you're moving around the seat frame. This is going to provide some extra stability for your foam not to seep down through your seat springs. Unlike our front seat bottom, the front seat tops do not have 2-inch felt attached around the outside perimeter. Moving back to our front seat bottom, we want to prepare a molded foam to attach to our seat springs. You see Randy's using a foam saw to cut down through the molded foam. You can use Mom's old carving knife, or a razor blade, or a pair of scissors will do the same trick. We then want to take a black Sharpie, where we just made those cuts, draw down through the molded foam on top of the burlap. This is where we're going to attach our paper-coated listing wire. Now the paper-coated listing wire needs to be bent on each end. On the front edge, needs to have a 90-degree bend and tuck underneath the 2-inch felt. This way the listing and your seat cover is not going to travel front to back. And we want to repeat the process on the opposite side as well. Now you want to attach around the paper-coated listing wire and through the burlap and around the seat springs. Now it's a good idea before you permanently attach your molded foam to peek down through your molded foam and make sure that you can see your paper-coated listing wire. Our next step will be to flip the seat over and permanently anchor the molded foam to the seat frame. Now you'll do that by attaching the muslin, which is glued to our molded foam kit, wrap it around the seat frame, and hog ring it through the factory locations in your seat frame. To learn how to prepare your foam, you can get on the Legendary Auto Interiors website at www.legendaryautointeriors.com and find out how to prepare your molded foam and get it ready for your seat springs. Now that we've attached our molded foam to our seat springs, we're ready to move on into our front seat top. As we did on our front seat bottom, you'll see Randy's using a foam saw to cut down through the channel listings. Our next step is to slide the molded foam over the top of our seat frame, making sure it's in position. We want to take that black Sharpie again, draw down through where we've made our cuts down through our molded foam, and draw right on top of our burlap the straight line where we're going to attach our paper-coated listing wires. Now the paper-coated listing wire at the very bottom edge, you want to make sure it has a 90-degree angle, so that way that paper-coated listing wire doesn't travel up and down or back and forth on your seat. Now we want to attach the paper-coated listing wire along that black line that we drew down through our molded foam. You want to space the hog rings out about every 3 to 4 inches and attach it around the paper-coated listing wire, through the burlap, and around our seat springs. We want to repeat the process on the opposite side, making that 90-degree bend on the very bottom. We then want to slide our molded foam back over the top of our seat frame and peek down through where we've made our cuts to make sure that you can see your paper-coated listing wire. Our last step will be to attach the muslin that's glued to our molded foam kit. We want to wrap that around the seat frame and attach it in the factory locations. Our next step will be to insert the paper-coated listing wire through the listing pockets that are sewn into the seat cover. You want to make sure that the listing pockets and the listing wire are the same length. Now you want to turn your seat cover inside out and double check your measurements. Make sure the seat is positioned onto the seat frame and seat foam symmetrically. You want to make sure your back edge lines up, make sure your piping on your front edge lines up. Now our next step will be to attach the paper-coated listing wire that is in the pocket, into the seat cover. You want to hog ring through that area and then around the other paper-coated listing wire that's attached to the top side of the burlap. Now you want to attach these hog rings about every 3 to 4 inches apart. After we get both sides finished, it's a good idea to double check, make sure your corners are lined up. And if your corners are lined up and your seat cover is on there symmetrically, we can go ahead and start with the back edge and secure by wrapping the seat cover over the back edge. We always want to start installing the seat cover from back to front, always back to front. And we want to secure the welt to the bottom side of the seat springs before we move over to our front edge, and we want to stretch the seat cover over to the corner and then gently roll the corners of the vinyl over the edge of the molded foam. It's a good idea to compress the foam up underneath the seat cover as you're rolling it over. Now it's going to appear tight, but that's the way you want the cover to look. And you can gently massage any wrinkles out of your seat cover while you're installing it. And our last step will be to secure the vinyl to the seat frame. We want to start at the front corners to make sure that the seat cover is symmetrically installed left to right. We want to move on to our sides, attach the flaps that wrap over the edge of the seat springs, and attach it on the factory locations. We want to repeat the opposite side as well. Our last step, we want to wrap over the edge of the rear stretch panel and attach it to the lower sides of the seat springs. It's a good idea to make sure your cover at this point is installed symmetrically left to right. Pull the vinyl taut and put a hog ring through the edge of the cord welt and around the seat springs. Our next step, after the back edge is attached, on the outside edges where we first made our anchor points, we can remove those 2 hog rings and retension that area. At any point you want to have the folks at Legendary Auto Interiors do the restoration work for you, give us a call at 1-800-363-8804 or visit our website at www.legendaryautointeriors.com. This should be a last step for installing our front seat bottom seat cover. After we attach the rear stretch panel, you should flip it over and your cover should look like $1 million. Our next step, moving on to our front seat top, is to install the paper-coated listing wires into the pockets that are sewn into our front seat top seat cover. You want to make sure that the listing wires are the same length as the pockets that are sewn into the cover. We want to turn the cover inside out measure our listing pockets that tuck down through our foam. We want to create our center point, and we want to double check and measure our molded foam kit to make sure that those dimensions are correct on the molded foam and the seat cover. On the 1970 Challenger front seat top, we want to start with the horizontal listing wire that is located just below the headrest. We want to make sure we're centered left to right, and install about 3 hog rings horizontally, 1 in the center and 2 on the outsides, so we can have our height set on where our seat cover is attached. After attaching our horizontal listing, we want to attach the vertical listings on each side. You want to attach a hog ring about every 3 to 4 inches apart. That way the insert section of our seat cover is all attached before we start wrapping our perimeter. We want to double check our symmetry, make sure we're all set height-wise and left to right. Our next step will be to move on to the headrest area. We want to carefully grab a hold of the center section so it doesn't tear. It's a very important step. And fold over the edges of the seat cover over the top of the molded foam. And you want to be careful that the seat cover doesn't rip, because the tension that's on the foam will create a high stress area in that headrest area. You want to carefully work your way down towards the bottom edge of the seat, folding the edges of the material over on all sides before you start attaching any hog rings. Now you can carefully shove the molded foam up underneath the seat cover as you're wrapping it around. And you can work the vinyl with your hand. You'll see Randy's making sure the seat cover is on symmetrical before he flips it over and starts attaching the hog rings on the backside. Now it's a good idea to anchor the sides of the headrest first so we can interlock the back sides of the headrest. There's a plastic flap that interlocks within each other, and then is hog ringed at the base of that plastic flap. It may take a little bit of muscle work to work those seams together. Now again, I want to stress the importance in that headrest area. You need to hang on to those seams as you're attaching those, because it's a really high stress area. After the headrest area is all attached, you want to move your way down towards the sides. It's a good idea at the bottom edge of the seat to anchor your seat cover down towards the bottom edge, making sure your seat cover is symmetrical, and then work your way from the top all the way down to the bottom and repeat the process on the opposite side. Once in a while, you want to take a peek at that front side to make sure your seat cover is installed symmetrically and there's no wrinkles. You can actually work the vinyl a little bit with your hands. If you find you need to remove some hog rings, you can do that as well. You'll see Randy's massaging the vinyl, working some minor wrinkles out that you may have. Our last step will be to attach the lower stretch panel. Now the lower stretch panel stretches from the front side of the seat in between the arms of the seat frame on our front seat top, and then attaches to the seat frame on the back side. Now it's a good idea to make sure that the opening for your seat latch is in the proper location as well. And this should finish your seat installation.
Well, hopefully this video has been very helpful for you. Now you can use this as a guideline for installing any high back bucket. You want to install the insert perimeters first and then the outer perimeters last. I would like to thank all the people at Legendary Auto Interiors for making this possible. We'd like to thank Randy Brown. We'd like to thank our sponsors. And most of all, we'd like to thank you. For Legendary Auto Interiors, I'm Ron Halbritter. We'll see you next time.